Chapter 1. The Great Mystery begins. Picture this. You're walking along a beach after a storm, and you find something impossible. A piece of metal, perfectly smooth, with markings you've never seen before. You take it to experts, and they tell you it shouldn't exist. According to everything we know about history, no one could have made this 15,000 years ago. But what if they're wrong? What if the story we've been told about human history is missing huge pieces? Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating mysteries on Earth. A mystery that challenges everything you learned in school about when civilization really began. We're going to discover evidence of advanced societies that existed thousands of years before the pyramids, before writing, before we were supposed to be anything more than simple hunter-gatherers. Have you ever wondered why ancient myths from completely different cultures all tell the same story? Why do people who never met, separated by oceans and thousands of years, all remember great floods that destroyed the world? Why do they all speak of golden ages that came before, when giants walked the earth and incredible cities touched the sky? What if these aren't just stories? What if they're memories? Dr. Robert Schoch, a professor at Boston University, made a discovery in the 1990s that shook the archaeological world. He proved that the Great Sphinx of Egypt shows clear signs of water erosion. But here's the problem. Egypt hasn't had enough rainfall to cause that kind of erosion for over 7,000 years. The Sphinx would have to be much older than anyone thought possible. This discovery opened a door that many scientists wish had stayed closed. Because once you start looking, you find evidence everywhere. Evidence that suggests our planet has been home to advanced civilizations, not once, not twice, but possibly dozens of times throughout history. Think about it this way. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Modern humans have existed for about 300,000 years, but recorded history only goes back 5,000 years. That means 99% of human history is completely unknown to us. What happened during all that time? The official story says according to our timeline, shouldn't have existed. But what if these monuments aren't the beginning of human achievement? What if they're the survivors? The few remaining traces of much older civilizations that were almost completely wiped out by catastrophic events. Consider this. If our civilization ended tomorrow, what would remain after 10,000 years? Our steel buildings would rust away. Our concrete would crumble. Our plastic would break down. Even our nuclear waste would eventually fade. In 50,000 years, almost nothing would be left except maybe some stone foundations and pottery shards. Now imagine trying to reconstruct our entire civilization from just those fragments. Future archaeologists might conclude that we were primitive people who lived in small villages and made simple clay pots. They'd never guess we had smartphones, space stations, or the internet. This is exactly what might have happened to earlier civilizations. They rose, they flourished, they achieved incredible things, and then something catastrophic happened. A massive flood when the ice caps melted, a volcanic winter that lasted years, an asteroid impact that changed the climate overnight. The survivors would have struggled just to stay alive. Over generations, their knowledge would be lost, their cities would crumble, their achievements would fade into legend. But not everything disappears completely. Sometimes, fragments survive. Strange artifacts that don't fit our timeline. Myths that seem too specific to be just imagination. Ruins that appear older than they should be. Dr. Zahi Hawass, former Egyptian Minister of Antiquities, once said that there are discoveries being made in Egypt that would rewrite history books. But these discoveries are often kept quiet, stored away, not shared with the public. Why? Because they don't fit the accepted narrative. What if the truth is that human civilization is much older than we've been told? What if we're not the first advanced society on Earth, but perhaps the 5th, or 10th, or 100th? And if that's true, what happened to all the others? As we continue this journey tonight, we're going to explore the evidence. We'll visit underwater ruins that shouldn't exist. We'll examine maps that show lands covered by ice for thousands. You're a marine archaeologist, diving into the crystal-clear waters off the coast of Japan. You're expecting to see coral reefs and schools of fish. Instead, your underwater lights illuminate something impossible. Massive stone terraces, perfectly carved steps, and what looks like the ruins of an ancient city. This isn't imagination. This is exactly what happened in 1987 near Yonaguni Island, Japan, when diving instructor Kihachiro Aratake made one of the most controversial underwater discoveries in history. The Yonaguni Monument, as it's now called, sits 75 feet beneath the Pacific Ocean. It's enormous, nearly 500 feet long and 130 feet wide. The structure includes what appear to be steps, ramps, pillars, and even what some researchers believe are carved faces and symbols. Here's what makes this discovery so shocking. If this monument was built by humans, it would have to be at least 12,000 years old. That's because the last time this area was above water was at the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. But 12,000 years ago, according to everything we're taught in school, humans were primitive hunter-gatherers who lived in caves and had barely invented agriculture. They certainly couldn't have built massive stone monuments with precise geometric angles. Dr. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Ryukyus, has spent over 20 years studying Yonaguni. He's convinced it's man-made. He points to features that he says could never have been created by natural erosion. Straight edges, right angles, and what appear to be deliberately carved symbols. But the mainstream archaeological community remains skeptical. They argue it's just an unusual rock formation, shaped by natural forces. Why are they so resistant to the possibility that it might be artificial? Perhaps because accepting Yonaguni as man-made would mean rewriting the entire timeline of human civilization. But Yonaguni isn't alone. Underwater ruins have been discovered all around the world, in places where they shouldn't exist, according to our understanding of history. Off the coast of India, near the ancient city of carbon dating of artifacts recovered from the site suggests ages of up to 9,500 years old. If confirmed, this would make it one of the oldest cities ever discovered, older than the earliest known civilizations in Mesopotamia. But here's where it gets controversial. The Indian government initially supported the research, but then suddenly classified much of the information. Why would they want to keep these discoveries secret? Dr. S.R. Rao, who led the marine archaeological explorations, believes political and religious sensitivities played a role. The discoveries seem to support ancient Hindu texts that describe advanced civilizations existing thousands of years before Western archaeology says they were possible. Let's travel to the Mediterranean, where another underwater mystery awaits. Off the coast of Greece lies Pavlopetri, a Bronze Age city that's been perfectly preserved beneath the waves for over 5,000 years. Unlike other underwater sites, Pavlopetri is officially recognized by archaeologists. It includes streets, buildings, courtyards, and even graves. The city is so well preserved that researchers can walk along its ancient streets and see how people lived thousands of years ago. But here's what's interesting. Pavlopetri proves that coastal cities can be perfectly preserved underwater. If a 5,000-year-old city can survive in such good condition, What about older sites? What about cities that were flooded when sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age? Dr. John Henderson from the University of Nottingham, who has studied Pavlopetri extensively, admits that the discovery has made him wonder what other cities might be hidden beneath the world's oceans. Consider this. At the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose by over 400 feet. Millions of square miles of coastal land were flooded. If advanced civilizations existed during the Ice Age, their cities would now be completely underwater, in some cases miles from the current shoreline. We've only explored about 5% of the world's oceans. That means 95% remains a complete mystery. How many ancient cities might be hiding in those unexplored depths? The implications are staggering. What if the reason we can't find evidence of advanced ancient cities would mean our ancestors were far more sophisticated than we've been told? It would mean they built cities, developed advanced architecture, and created complex societies thousands of years before the official beginning of civilization. And it would mean that most of human history lies hidden beneath the waves, waiting to be discovered. The ocean keeps its secrets well, but sometimes, in the clear waters off remote islands, or in the depths of ancient seas, those secrets surface just enough to remind us that the story of human civilization might be far older and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. What other cities lie sleeping beneath the waves? What other evidence of our forgotten past waits in the depths? As we continue our journey through these hidden histories, remember to hit that like button if you're finding these discoveries as mind-blowing as I am. And share this with someone who loves mysteries. They'll thank you for opening their eyes to these incredible underwater secrets. Chapter 3. The Mapmakers Who Knew Too Much. In 1929, workers renovating the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul made a discovery that would puzzle historians for decades. Hidden away in the palace archives, they found a map drawn on gazelle skin by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis in 1513. At first glance, it seemed like just another old map. But when scholars examined it closely, they found something impossible. The map showed the coastline of Antarctica. Not just any view of Antarctica, but Antarctica as it would look without its ice sheet, showing rivers, valleys, and mountain ranges that have been buried under ice for thousands of years. Here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years after Piri Reis drew his map. And the continent has been covered by ice for at least 6,000 years. So how could a 16th century Turkish admiral have drawn an accurate map of a frozen continent's hidden features? When the map was brought to the attention of the US Air Force in 1960, they were baffled. Captain Lorenzo Burrows, who helped analyze it, stated that the map showed features that weren't confirmed by modern science until 1958, when seismic surveys revealed the actual shape of the land beneath Antarctica's ice. Piri Reis himself, but the Piri Reis map isn't alone. There are other ancient maps that show impossible knowledge. The Oronteus Phineus map, drawn in 1532, also shows Antarctica ice-free. But it goes further. It shows the continent's interior, including mountain ranges and rivers that match what we now know exists beneath the ice. The Mercator map of 1569 depicts the Arctic region with remarkable accuracy, showing Greenland as 3 separate islands, something that wasn't confirmed until the 20th century, when we developed technology to see through the ice sheet. How did these map makers know details about our planet that we only rediscovered in the modern era using satellites and sonar? Let me tell you about the most intriguing map of all, the Buache map of 1737. Philippe Buache was the French royal geographer, and his map of Antarctica shows something extraordinary. It depicts the continent as 2 separate landmasses divided by a waterway. Modern science has confirmed that beneath Antarctica's ice sheet, there is indeed a channel that would separate the continent into two parts if the ice melted. Buash couldn't have known this through any technology available in 1737. So where did he get this information? These maps suggest something that mainstream history refuses to consider: that there was once a civilization advanced enough to conduct worldwide exploration and mapping, possibly during the last ice age, when sea levels were lower and Antarctica was ice-free. Think about what this means. To create accurate maps of the entire world, you need more than just ships. You need advanced mathematics to calculate longitude and latitude. You need precise instruments for navigation. You need a global network of explorers sharing information. This isn't the work of primitive hunter-gatherers living in caves. This is evidence of a sophisticated civilization with advanced technology and scientific knowledge. Dr. John G. Weihaupt, a geologist at the University of Colorado, has studied these anomalous maps extensively. He believes they represent fragments of much older geographical knowledge that somehow survived the collapse of an ancient civilization. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some researchers believe these maps might be connected to other mysteries or coincidences. Or do they represent fragments of a much older, more advanced understanding of our world and cosmos? Consider this. If an advanced civilization existed during the Ice Age, they would have had access to lands that are now underwater. They could have built cities on what are now continental shelves. They could have mined resources and established trade routes in areas that are now beneath hundreds of feet of ocean. When the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose, their coastal cities would have been drowned. Their trade routes would have been cut off. Their civilization might have collapsed, leaving only scattered survivors carrying fragments of knowledge. These survivors might have preserved some of their maps, passing them down through generations. Eventually, these ancient maps could have made their way into the hands of later civilizations, who copied them without fully understanding what they represented. This would explain why medieval mapmakers sometimes included details they couldn't possibly have known through their own exploration. They were copying from older sources that contained knowledge from a lost age. Professor Hapgood believed that the Earth's crust had shifted dramatically at the end of the last ice age, causing massive climate changes and the destruction of advanced civilizations. While his theory of crustal displacement isn't accepted by mainstream geology, his work on ancient maps has never been adequately explained. What we're left with is a mystery that challenges everything we think we know about human history. These maps suggest that someone, at some point in the distant past, knew more about our planet than they should have, according to our timeline of human development. The mapmakers who created these incredible charts were working with knowledge that seems to come from an impossible source. A civilization that explored the world when it looked very different than it does today. As we journey deeper into these mysteries, ask yourself this: if these maps are evidence of lost knowledge, what else might our ancestors have known that we've forgotten? What other secrets from humanity's hidden past are waiting to be rediscovered? Make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to explore ruins that will challenge everything you believe about when advanced civilization really began. The evidence keeps getting stronger, and the implications keep getting planning, sophisticated tools, and coordinated effort from many skilled workers. Here's what makes this discoverery revolutionary. Göbekli Tepe is 11,600 years old. That's twice as old as Stonehenge and older than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. It was built during a time when, according to mainstream archaeology, humans were just beginning to develop agriculture. But this wasn't built by simple farmers learning to grow crops. This was built by people with advanced knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and mathematics. The site covers 22 acres, and ground-penetrating radar suggests that what's been excavated so far represents less than 5% of the total complex. Schmidt himself said the discovery was so significant that it would change everything we know about human prehistory. He compared it to landing on the moon in terms of its impact on our understanding of the past. But here's the strangest part. After Göbekli Tepe was completed, it was deliberately buried. Someone covered the entire complex with tons of earth, preserving it perfectly for thousands of years. Who would bury such an incredible achievement, and why? The implications of Göbekli Tepe are staggering. If humans could build something this sophisticated 11,600 years ago, what else were they capable of? What other achievements from this period have been lost to time? Let's travel to Peru, high in the Andes Mountains, where another impossible site challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. Pumapunku, part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, features some of the most precisely cut stone blocks ever discovered. These aren't rough-hewn stones stacked on top of each other. These are perfectly fitted blocks with complex notches, angles, and surfaces that fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle. The precision is so exact that you can't slip a knife blade between the joints. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons, yet they were transported from quarries 40 miles away and lifted to an altitude of 12,800 feet above sea level. Engineer Christopher Dunn, who has spent decades studying, demonstrates mathematical and engineering knowledge that seems impossibly advanced for its time. The base of the pyramid is level to within just 2.1 centimeters. The pyramid is aligned almost perfectly with true north, with an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree. The mathematical relationships built into its dimensions encode the value of pi and the golden ratio. But perhaps most incredibly, the Great Pyramid's location at the center of Earth's landmass appears to be deliberate. The pyramid sits at the intersection of the longest line of latitude and the longest line of longitude that cross only land. The odds of this being accidental are virtually zero. Who chose this location? How did ancient builders know enough about global geography to select the exact center of all landmasses on Earth? Master builder and engineer Christopher Dunn has proposed that the Great Pyramid might have been more than just a tomb. His analysis suggests it could have been a sophisticated machine designed to harness Earth's natural energies. The pyramid's internal chambers show acoustic properties that could amplify sound waves and electromagnetic phenomena. While this theory is controversial, it's supported by physical evidence that's difficult to explain otherwise. Scorch marks on the walls of the king's chamber suggest intense heat. Salt deposits indicate chemical reactions. The granite blocks contain quartz crystals that could generate electrical energy under pressure. Could the Great Pyramid have been a power plant, a communication device, something far more advanced than we've ever imagined? Let's journey to Easter Island, where nearly 1,000 massive stone statues called moai dot the landscape. These statues, some weighing up to 80 tons, were somehow transported from a central quarry to locations all around the island. Recent discoveries have revealed that the moai aren't just heads. They have full bodies buried beneath centuries of soil accumulation. Some of these buried bodies are covered with intricate carvings and symbols that have never been fully decoded. But here's what's most puzzling. How did the ancient Rapa Nui people transport these massive statues? The island has no large trees suitable for rollers, no animals for pulling, and no metal tools for construction. Local legends say the statues walked. Ground-penetrating radar and other geological surveys have revealed what appear to be artificial structures, underground tunnels and chambers. While mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, the evidence is intriguing. The hills in question have geometric shapes too regular to be natural. They're oriented to cardinal directions with astronomical significance, and they emit electromagnetic phenomena that can't be easily explained. Whether or not these are actually ancient pyramids, they raise important questions about how much we really know about our planet's past. From Turkey to Peru, from Egypt to Easter Island, we find evidence of ancient peoples achieving things that seem impossible given our understanding of their capabilities. These aren't isolated anomalies. They're part of a global pattern of advanced achievement that predates known history. What's most striking is that many of these sites show evidence of being much older than originally thought. Dating methods keep pushing back the ages of these monuments, suggesting that advanced civilization might be far more ancient than we've been taught. Could these be the surviving remnants of much older civilizations? The fragments that somehow survived catastrophic changes that wiped out most evidence of humanity's true history. The builders of these incredible sites possessed knowledge of engineering, mathematics, astronomy, and physics that rivals our own understanding. They moved massive stones with precision we struggle to match. They encoded sophisticated knowledge into their constructions that we're still trying to decode. These cities and monuments that time forgot are trying to tell us something. They're whispering secrets about our past, about capabilities we've lost, and knowledge we've forgotten. As we continue to explore these mysteries, keep an open mind. The evidence suggests that human history is far older and far more sophisticated than we've been led to believe. Don't forget to like this video if these ancient mysteries are fascinating you as much as they fascinate me. And please, share this with anyone who loves archaeological puzzles. They deserve to know about these incredible discoveries that are rewriting human history. Chapter 5. The Survivors' Tales. Every culture on Earth has flood stories. Every single one. Describe the destruction of advanced civilizations. The Sumerian King List, one of the oldest historical documents ever discovered, divides history into two periods: before the flood and after the flood. Before the flood, it says, kings reigned for impossibly long periods, thousands of years. After the flood, human lifespans became normal, and civilization had to be rebuilt from scratch. This isn't mythology. The Sumerian King List was used as an official historical record by multiple ancient civilizations. Why would they include such specific details about pre-flood civilizations if these were just made-up stories? Let me tell you about the Aboriginal Australians, who have maintained the world's oldest continuous oral tradition. Their Dreamtime stories speak of a time when the world was very different, when sea levels were much lower, and you could walk to places that are now islands. Modern science has confirmed that during the last ice age, sea levels were indeed 400 feet lower than today. You could walk from Australia to New Guinea, from Britain to continental Europe, from Siberia to Alaska. The Aboriginal stories accurately describe a world that hasn't existed for over 10,000 years. But their stories go deeper. They speak of the time before time, when advanced beings lived among humans and taught them incredible knowledge. These beings, according to the stories, eventually left or were destroyed in a great catastrophe. Dr. Lynn Kelly, who has studied Aboriginal oral traditions, believes these stories preserve accurate information about events that occurred thousands of years ago. The Aboriginal people have maintained detailed knowledge of astronomy, navigation, and natural phenomena that Western science has only recently confirmed. In the Americas, the Hopi tribe speaks of previous worlds that were destroyed when humanity became corrupt. According to their traditions, we're currently living in the fourth world. The first three worlds were each destroyed by different catastrophes: fire, ice, and flood. What's remarkable is how specific these stories are. The Hopi describe advanced technologies that existed in previous worlds: flying machines, cities that could move, and devices for communicating across great distances. They said historical accounts as mere mythology. Hindu cosmology describes vast cycles of time called yugas. According to this system, human civilization goes through repeating cycles of rise and fall. The current age, called the Kali Yuga, is described as a degenerate period when humanity has forgotten most of its ancient knowledge. The previous age, the Dvapara Yuga, was said to be a time when humans had access to incredible technologies and lived in harmony with advanced beings called the Devas. The text described flying vehicles called Vimanas, weapons of incredible power, and cities that could travel through the sky. Dr. Richard Thompson, a mathematician and Sanskrit scholar, has analyzed these ancient Indian texts and found remarkably detailed descriptions of advanced technologies. The Vaimanika Shastra, for example, contains specific instructions for building aircraft, including details about metallurgy, fuel systems, and navigation methods. Could these be garbled memories of real technologies that existed in earlier civilizations? In South America, the Inca spoke of the previous age as the time of the Viracocha, godlike beings who taught humanity the arts of civilization. According to Inca traditions, these beings eventually departed, promising to return one day. Interestingly, when Spanish conquistadors arrived, many Native Americans initially believed they were the returning Viracocha. This suggests the memory of advanced visitors was so deeply embedded in their culture that they expected these beings to return. The patterns are unmistakable. Cultures around the world, with no contact with each other, all remember the same basic story. There was once an advanced age when humanity possessed incredible knowledge and technology. This age ended in catastrophe. The survivors lost most of their knowledge and had to rebuild civilization from scratch. But some memory survived. Some knowledge was preserved in stories, myths, and oral traditions passed down through generations. Modern catastrophe researchers like Dr. Randall Carlson have found geological evidence supporting these ancient memories. The end of the last ice age wasn't gradual. It was marked by massive flooding, volcanic activity, and climate changes that would have been devastating to end. Geology proves they did. The question is whether advanced civilizations existed when they happened, and whether some survivors carried knowledge from those civilizations into later ages. Consider this: if our civilization collapsed tomorrow, what would survive? Our electronic records would be lost within decades. Our books would decay within centuries. Only oral traditions might preserve fragments of our knowledge for future generations. And what would those future storytellers remember? They might speak of a time when people could fly across the world in hours, when they could communicate instantly with anyone on Earth, when they had access to all of human knowledge through small devices they carried in their pockets. Future archaeologists might dismiss these as fantasy stories, impossible myths about magical powers. But we know they would be memories of real technologies. This is exactly what might have happened with the survivor stories from earlier civilizations. What we call mythology might be memory, distorted by time, but preserving kernels of truth about humanity's lost past. The survivors' tales aren't just stories, they're messages from our ancestors, warnings about what happened before and what could happen again. They're reminders that human civilization is more fragile than we like to believe, and that knowledge, once lost, can take millennia to rediscover. As we listen to these ancient voices, we begin to understand that our history might be far richer and far more complex than we ever imagined. We might not be the first advanced civilization on Earth. We might be the latest in a long line of rises and falls, each building on the fragments left by those who came before. Share this revelation with others who are ready to question what we've been told about our past. The survivors' tales are calling to us across the centuries, and it's time we started listening. Chapter 6: Secrets Written in Stone. Walk into any museum and you'll see stone artifacts labeled with confident dates. 3000 BCE, 1500 BCE, 500 CE. But what if I told you that some of these dates might be wrong by thousands of years? The problem with dating ancient stone structures is that we can't carbon date stone itself. We can only date organic materials found nearby and assume they're related to the construction. But what if those organic materials are from much later periods? What has been arid for over 5,000 years? The last time Egypt had enough rainfall to cause this type of erosion was between 7 and 9,000 BCE. This means the Sphinx could be over 11,000 years old, making it older than Stonehenge, older than the first civilizations in Mesopotamia, older than agriculture itself. The implications are staggering. If the Sphinx is that old, who built it? According to mainstream archaeology, there were no advanced civilizations capable of such construction at that time. Yet there it stands, weathered by rains that fell thousands of years before recorded history began. But the Sphinx isn't the only ancient structure that challenges our timeline. In Turkey, at a site called Göbekli Tepe, we find even more problematic evidence. The massive stone pillars at Göbekli Tepe were carved and erected around 9600 BCE, over 11,000 years ago. Some of these pillars weigh 50 tons and are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and symbols. The level of skill required for this work suggests an advanced civilization with sophisticated tools and organized labor. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, who excavated the site, called it a cathedral on a hill built by Stone Age people. But here's the mystery. After being used for about 1,500 years, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried under tons of earth and stones. Who would bury such an incredible achievement, and why? One possibility is that this wasn't done by the original builders, but by survivors of a catastrophe who wanted to preserve the site for future generations. By burying it completely, they ensured its survival through whatever disasters were to come. Recent ground-penetrating radar has revealed that Göbekli Tepe is far larger than originally thought. What's been excavated represents less than 5% of the total complex. Dozens of stone circles remain buried, waiting to be uncovered. In Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman near Cusco displays stonework that defies explanation. Massive blocks of stone, some weighing over 200 tons, are fitted together with such precision that you can't slip a knife blade between them. The Inca, who occupied the site when Spanish conquistadors arrived, claimed they didn't build the massive lower levels, tools and techniques that were lost to time. In Japan, beneath the waters off Yonaguni Island, lies what appears to be a massive stone structure with steps, ramps and terraces. Marine geologist Dr. Masaki Kimura has studied the monument for over 2 decades and believes it's artificial. If Yonaguni is man-made, it would have been built when the area was above sea level, at least 12,000 years ago. The structure shows tool marks, right angles, and geometric patterns that are difficult to explain as natural formations. But mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, arguing that such construction would be impossible for the hunter-gatherer societies that supposedly existed at that time. Notice the pattern? Every time we find evidence of advanced ancient construction, it's dismissed because it doesn't fit the accepted timeline of human development. But what if the timeline is wrong? In India, the temples of Ellora and Ajanta contain some of the most sophisticated rock-carved architecture in the world. The Kailash temple at Ellora was carved top down from a single piece of rock. Over 400,000 tons of stone were removed to create this incredible structure. But here's what's puzzling. There's no evidence of where all that removed stone went. In a project of this scale, there should be massive piles of stone chips and debris, yet none have been found. Some researchers suggest this indicates the temple is much older than believed, giving time for the debris to be weathered away or recycled for other projects. If true, it would mean advanced stone carving techniques existed in India thousands of years earlier than currently accepted. The precision of ancient stonework isn't limited to famous sites. Around the world, from Easter Island to Ethiopia, from Peru to Lebanon, we find examples of megalithic construction that demonstrates advanced knowledge of engineering, mathematics, and physics. At Baalbek in Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter sits on a foundation of massive stone blocks. 3 of these blocks, known as the Trilithon, weigh an estimated 800 tons each. A 4th block, still in the quarry, weighs over 1,000 tons and would be among the heaviest objects ever moved by humans. How are these blocks quarried, transported, and lifted into place? Modern cranes can lift about knowledge and capabilities that don't fit the standard story of human development. They worked with mathematical precision, moved impossibly heavy blocks, and created structures that have survived for millennia. These aren't just impressive buildings. They're messages from the past, encoded in stone to survive whatever catastrophes might come. They're proof that human civilization is older and more sophisticated than we've been told. The question isn't whether ancient peoples could achieve these feats. The evidence shows they did. The question is how they did it, and what other knowledge they possessed that we've forgotten. As we continue to study these stone monuments, we're not just learning about ancient construction techniques. We're discovering that human history needs to be rewritten, and that the builders of these incredible structures were trying to tell us something important about our past. Something that orthodox archaeology isn't ready to hear, but that the stones themselves refuse to let us forget. Comment below, which of these ancient stone mysteries intrigues you the most? The evidence is all around us, waiting for those with eyes to see and minds open enough to question what we've been taught. Chapter 7. When Giants Walked the Earth. In 1912, archaeologists working for the Smithsonian Institution made a discovery in Wisconsin that would be buried and forgotten for over a century. They found skeletons of humans that were 7 to 9 feet tall, with skulls significantly larger than modern humans, and bone structures that suggested incredible physical strength. The discovery was reported in local newspapers, documented in field reports, and catalogued by the Smithsonian. Then something strange happened. The skeletons disappeared. The reports were filed away and forgotten. The discovery was never mentioned in official publications. This wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers across America regularly reported discoveries of giant human skeletons. The New York Times, Scientific American, and Smithsonian publications documented hundreds of these finds. In 1891, the Smithsonian's own annual report systematically removed from the historical record. The disappearance of giant skeletons isn't limited to America. Similar patterns exist worldwide. In Romania, researchers have found skeletons of humans over 12 feet tall in underground chambers. Local authorities have restricted access to the sites, and information about the discoveries has been suppressed. In Russia, archaeologists working in the Caucasus Mountains have uncovered remains of exceptionally tall humans with elongated skulls and robust bone structures. These discoveries are rarely reported in international journals and seem to be deliberately kept quiet. In Australia, Aboriginal legends speak of the Kwinkin, a race of giant beings who lived in the land before the current Aboriginal peoples arrived. Rock paintings throughout Australia depict these giants, showing them alongside normal-sized humans for scale. Recent archaeological work in Australia has uncovered tools and weapons that seem designed for people much larger than average humans. Stone axes with handles 8 feet long, spear points too large for normal-sized people to use effectively. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence comes from South America. In Peru, elongated skulls have been found that are 25% larger than normal human skulls and 50% heavier. These aren't the result of head binding or artificial deformation. The bone structure is fundamentally different from modern humans. DNA analysis of these skulls has revealed something shocking. They contain genetic material that doesn't match any known human population. The mitochondrial DNA shows mutations that shouldn't exist in Homo sapiens. Dr. Brian Forrester, who has studied these skulls extensively, believes they represent a different human subspecies, one that was significantly taller and had larger brain capacity than modern humans. The Paracas skulls, as they're known, date back over 2,000 years, but similar elongated skulls have been found throughout the world. In Egypt, in Malta, in Germany, in China. Always associated with ruling classes, always buried with the finest artifacts, always treated as special. Ancient texts from around the world describe giants who ruled over normal humans in earlier ages. The Bible mentions the Nephilim, described as giants in the earth, of the Jotnar, a race of giants who lived in the world before humans. Similar stories exist in Celtic, Slavic, and Chinese traditions. Could these myths be distorted memories of real beings who once lived on Earth? The Sumerian king list, one of the oldest historical documents, describes rulers who lived for thousands of years and were much larger than normal humans. These kings are said to have possessed knowledge that far exceeded later human understanding. In South America, the Inca told Spanish conquistadors about the previous inhabitants of their lands, giant beings who built the massive stone structures that the Inca themselves couldn't replicate. When the Spanish asked how the massive stones of Sacsayhuaman were moved and fitted so precisely, the Inca replied that they were built by giants, who could carry the stones as easily as normal men carry pebbles. Modern science has confirmed that, during certain periods in Earth's history, environmental conditions could have supported much larger life forms. Higher atmospheric oxygen levels, different gravitational conditions, and other factors might have made it possible for humans to grow much larger than they do today. Fossil evidence shows that many species were much larger in the past. Giant mammals, massive insects, enormous fish. Earth has clearly supported life forms much bigger than what we see today. If environmental conditions could support giant versions of other species, why not giant humans? The suppression of giant skeleton discoveries raises troubling questions about who controls our understanding of history. Why would evidence of human giants be systematically removed from museums and archaeological records? Some researchers believe it's because the discovery of human giants would challenge evolutionary theory and our understanding of human development. Others suggest religious motivations, that the existence of giants would validate certain biblical accounts that mainstream science prefers to dismiss. But perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that the giants weren't just larger humans. They were the remnants of an earlier, more advanced civilization. If giants possessed advanced knowledge, as ancient texts suggest, then their skeletons might represent evidence of lost civilizations that mainstream archaeology isn't ready to acknowledge. The tools found with giant skeletons, often technologies and wisdom from earlier ages. As these giant survivors died out, their knowledge would have been lost, leaving only myths and legends of the Golden Age, when giants ruled the earth. Today, the evidence of human giants has been largely erased from official history, but the traces remain. In newspaper reports, in ancient texts, in the oral traditions of indigenous peoples around the world. The giants walked among us once, and their legacy may be far more significant than we've been allowed to know. When giants walked the earth, they carried with them the memory of earlier ages, the knowledge of lost civilizations, and perhaps the secrets of humanity's true past. Like this video if you think there's more to human history than we've been told, and share it with others who are ready to question the official story. Because the evidence suggests that giants weren't just myths, they were real beings who once ruled our world. Chapter 8. The warning signs around us. Right now, as you listen to this, our civilization displays all the warning signs that preceded the collapse of earlier advanced societies. The question isn't whether our world could be reset, it's when, and whether we'll recognize the signs before it's too late. Dr. Joseph Tainter, author of The Collapse of Complex Societies, has studied the patterns that lead to civilizational collapse. He's identified consistent warning signs that appear before every major societal breakdown: increasing complexity, diminishing returns on investments, social fragmentation, and the inability to solve mounting problems. Sound familiar? Our modern world has become incredibly complex. We depend on intricate global supply chains, electronic systems that control everything from power grids to water supplies, and financial networks so complicated that no single person understands them completely. This complexity makes us powerful, but it also makes us fragile. When complex systems fail, they often fail catastrophically and suddenly. Consider what happened in 2021, when a single container ship, the Ever Given, blocked the Suez Canal for just 6 days. Global trade ground to a halt. Shortages appeared worldwide. Conditions. But natural disasters aren't the only threat. We're living through what many scientists call the 6th mass extinction. Species are disappearing at rates not seen since the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Dr. Elizabeth Kolbert, author of The 6th Extinction, documents how human activity is causing biological collapse on a planetary scale. Ocean acidification, climate change, habitat destruction, and pollution are creating conditions that could trigger environmental collapse within decades. The warning signs are everywhere. Coral reefs are bleaching and dying. Fish populations are crashing. Insect populations, the foundation of most ecosystems, have declined by 75% in some regions. Our ancestors faced similar environmental pressures before their civilizations collapsed. The Maya civilization collapsed around 900 CE after a series of severe droughts. Tree ring data shows that the region experienced the worst dry period in 7,000 years. The Maya had built a sophisticated civilization in a challenging environment, but when the climate changed, their complex society couldn't adapt quickly enough. The Anasazi people of the American Southwest abandoned their cliff dwellings and pueblos around 1300 CE. Archaeological evidence suggests they faced a combination of drought, deforestation, and soil depletion that made their homeland uninhabitable. Easter Island civilization collapsed after the inhabitants cut down all the trees on their island. Without wood for boats, they couldn't fish or trade. Without trees to prevent erosion, their agricultural soil washed away. The population crashed from an estimated 15,000 to just 2,000 survivors. these weren't primitive societies. The Maya had advanced mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. The Anasazi built sophisticated irrigation systems and multi-story buildings. Easter Island's inhabitants created one of the world's most impressive collections of monumental sculpture. But complex civilizations can collapse rapidly when they exceed their environmental limits or face catastrophic disruptions. Dr. Jared Diamond, author of Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, identifies 5 factors that contribute to civilizational collapse: environmental damage, climate change, hostile neighbors, friendly trade partners, and societies' supply chains collapsed. If major trading partners face internal problems, the effects ripple worldwide. Most critically, our society's response to mounting problems has been inadequate. We're aware of the risks, but seem unable to make the changes necessary to address them effectively. This paralysis in the face of obvious threats is exactly what happened to earlier civilizations before they collapsed. But environmental and social factors aren't the only risks we face. Our planet continues to be bombarded by asteroids and comets, just as it has throughout history. In 2013, a relatively small asteroid exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia. The blast was more powerful than a nuclear weapon, shattered windows across the city, and injured over 1,000 people. This was just a 20-meter rock, too small for our detection systems to spot in advance. NASA estimates that there are over 1 million asteroids larger than 40 meters that could potentially hit Earth. We've only catalogued about 1% of them. A 100-meter asteroid would devastate a major city. A kilometer-wide asteroid would cause global catastrophe, and we might have no warning at all. The Younger Dryas period, which began 12,900 years ago, may have been triggered by a comet impact that caused massive fires, floods, and climate change. If similar impacts occurred today, our technological civilization would be particularly vulnerable. Our power grids, satellite networks, and electronic systems would be destroyed by the electromagnetic pulse from a large impact. Our global food system, dependent on just-in-time delivery and industrial agriculture, would collapse within weeks. Volcanic supereruptions represent another existential threat. The Toba eruption 74,000 years ago caused a volcanic winter that may have reduced the human population to just a few thousand individuals. The Yellowstone caldera, Mount Tambora, and other supervolcanoes remain active. When they erupt again, and geological evidence suggests they will, the effects could be even more devastating to our complex technological society than to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Perhaps most concerning is that we seem to be repeating the same patterns that led to the collapse of earlier civilizations. We're depleting resources faster than they can be on a finite planet. When exponential trends hit physical limits, the result is often sudden collapse rather than gradual decline. The question facing our civilization is whether we can recognize these warning signs and adapt before it's too late, or whether we'll join the long list of advanced societies that couldn't solve their mounting problems in time. History shows us that civilizations often collapse when they appear strongest, when their achievements seem most impressive, when their people are most confident about their future. The Maya built their greatest cities just before their civilization collapsed. The Romans constructed their most impressive monuments as their empire was beginning to crumble. Easter Island's most ambitious statues were carved just before their society's final collapse. Are we carving our own version of Easter Island statues, building skyscrapers and launching rockets while ignoring the warning signs that our foundation is cracking? The evidence suggests that resets aren't just ancient history, they're part of Earth's continuing story, and our turn in the cycle may be approaching faster than we want to believe. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay informed about these crucial warning signs. Share this with others who need to understand what we're facing, because recognizing the patterns might be our only chance to break the cycle. Chapter 9. Tomorrow's Ancient Mystery. Imagine archaeologists in the year 15,000 CE, sifting through the ruins of our lost civilization. What would they find? What would they think of us? And what mysteries would our remains create for their understanding of the past? If current trends continue, most of our cities will be underwater. Sea levels have risen and fallen throughout Earth's history, and they will again. Our coastal megacities, New York, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong, could all become underwater ruins, just like the mysterious sites we've discovered from earlier civilizations. Future archaeologists, diving in what once was Manhattan, might find the corroded remains of skyscrapers poking through the sand. They might wonder how primitive people could have built such massive structures. They might debate whether these ruins are natural formations or evidence of an unknown civilization. Does this scenario sound familiar? It's exactly what we're debating. Natural erosion patterns, or evidence of an advanced but forgotten civilization. Our nuclear waste would create the longest-lasting traces of our existence. Some radioactive materials will remain dangerous for 100,000 years or more. Future civilizations might find these buried waste sites and wonder what kind of knowledge we possessed to create such long-lived materials. But would they understand what they were finding? Would they recognize radiation as evidence of advanced technology? Or would they just notice that certain areas seem cursed, where people get sick and plants don't grow properly? Dr. Carl Sagan once calculated how long evidence of our civilization would last. He concluded that after 10,000 years, almost nothing would remain except pottery shards and some stone structures. After 100,000 years, even these would be difficult to recognize. This means that if our civilization collapsed tomorrow and humans rebuilt 50,000 years from now, they might have no idea we ever existed. Just like we have no clear evidence of advanced civilizations that might have existed 50,000 years ago, the cycle continues. But what if some of us survived a global catastrophe? What knowledge would we try to preserve for future generations? The Cherokee tribe has oral traditions that seem to preserve memories from the last ice age over 10,000 years ago. They speak of a time when the land was different, when giant animals roamed the earth, when the climate was much colder. Modern science has confirmed these details. During the Ice Age, North America was indeed inhabited by giant mammals like mastodons and giant ground sloths. The climate was dramatically different. The Cherokee stories preserve accurate information across hundreds of generations. If our civilization collapsed, survivors might preserve fragments of our knowledge in similar ways. They might tell stories about the time when people could fly across the world in hours, when they could communicate instantly with anyone on Earth, when machines could think and create. Future civilizations might dismiss these as impossible myths, just as we often dismiss ancient stories of flying vehicles and advanced technologies. The Georgia Guidestones, built in 1980, were an attempt to preserve important knowledge for future civilizations. The monument contained guidelines for rebuilding society after a global catastrophe. Important. Civilizations are temporary, but knowledge can survive if we plan for it. The ancient megalithic sites around the world might have been built with similar intentions. They weren't just monuments to ego or religious devotion. They were attempts to preserve important knowledge through whatever catastrophes were to come. The alignment of these sites with astronomical phenomena might have been a way to preserve calendrical and navigational knowledge. The mathematical relationships encoded in their construction might have been intended to survive long after the people who built them were gone. If this is true, then sites like Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, and the Great Pyramid weren't just impressive buildings. They were libraries, encoded with knowledge that their builders wanted to preserve for future civilizations. We're only now beginning to decode the information preserved in these stone structures. advanced computer analysis has revealed mathematical relationships, astronomical alignments, and geometric principles that suggest sophisticated understanding of physics and mathematics. What if the builders knew their civilization was vulnerable to catastrophic change? What if they deliberately created monuments that would survive floods, earthquakes, and ice ages to pass their knowledge to whoever came after? This might explain why so many ancient sites seem over-engineered for their supposed purpose. Why build Stonehenge with such massive stones when smaller ones would have worked for simple ceremonies? Why create the Great Pyramid with such incredible precision when a rough pyramid would have sufficed as a tomb? Perhaps because these weren't built for their immediate function. They were built to last, through resets, to carry knowledge across the collapse and rebuilding of civilization. Dr. Robert Bauval, who discovered the correlation between the pyramids of Giza and the constellation Orion, believes the ancient Egyptians were trying to preserve astronomical knowledge through the monuments. The pyramid layout creates a permanent star map that would remain accurate for thousands of years. Similarly, the Antikythera mechanism, the ancient Greek computer discovered in a shipwreck, might represent an attempt to preserve astronomical and mathematical knowledge in a form that could survive catastrophic change. These devices weren't just tools for the fundamental principles that took us thousands of years to discover. Still others suggest preserving historical knowledge, records of what we've learned about human nature, about what leads to the rise and fall of civilizations, about the mistakes we've made and how to avoid repeating them. But here's the challenge. Any information storage system we can create will be vulnerable to the same forces that destroyed evidence of earlier civilizations. Electronic media fails within decades, paper decays within centuries, even stone erodes over millennia. The only information storage system that has truly lasted is human memory, preserved in oral traditions and myths. The Cherokee remembered the Ice Age. The Aborigines remembered when sea levels were different. Cultures around the world remembered great floods and catastrophic changes. Perhaps the most important knowledge to preserve isn't technical information, but wisdom. Understanding that civilizations rise and fall, that change is constant, that survival requires adaptability and humility. The ancient myths might be trying to tell us exactly this. They speak of cycles, of worlds that end and begin again, of the importance of remembering what came before while adapting to what comes next. If we become tomorrow's ancient mystery, will the civilizations that find our ruins learn from our example? Will they recognize the warning signs that we missed? Will they be wise enough to break the cycle of collapse and renewal? Or will they repeat our mistakes, building their own version of unsustainable complexity, ignoring their own warning signs until it's too late? The choice is ours. We can be the generation that finally learns from history's lessons, that recognizes the patterns and changes course before it's too late. Or we can become another cautionary tale, another lost civilization that future archaeologists puzzle over, wondering how we could have been so advanced, yet so blind to our own vulnerability. The evidence is all around us. The patterns are clear. The warning signs are flashing. The question is, will we listen to the whispers from our past, or will we become whispers for the future? As we conclude this journey through humanity's hidden history, remember that we're not just observers of these ancient mysteries. We're participants in the ongoing story of human civilization. The choices we make today will determine whether our descendants look back at us as the generation that broke the cycle of collapse. Break the cycle. Subscribe to stay informed about these crucial insights. Share this knowledge with others who are ready to question the official story and face the truth about our past and our future. Because the greatest mystery of all isn't what happened to the civilizations that came before us. It's what will happen to ours. The answer lies in our hands, and time is running out.